Hello guys, and welcome back to our amazing channel. I hope y'all are doing well. Before this story starts, I want you to hit the like button and look down there you will see the subscribe button. Also, smash it, so that you'd be among the first people to see our upload whenever it is posted. Thank you. The sun had barely risen over the red dust streets of McCurdy when Josiah pushed his old, rusting bike to the market one last time. That bike had been his lifeline, his transport, his delivery tool, his way of escaping poverty. But today, it would become something more. He needed the money. Sandra had called him again the night before, her voice trembling with hope. She had finally been accepted into a nursing school in Abuja. Her dream was within reach, but the school fees were far beyond what her family could afford. Without hesitation, Josiah promised he would make it happen, even if it meant giving up the little he had left. After hours of negotiation with a stubborn buyer, Josiah finally walked away from the deal with less than he deserved, but just enough to cover Sandra's admission. He skipped breakfast and lunch that day, too proud to mention his hunger as he made his way to her home, clutching the money tightly in a brown envelope. Sandra's eyes lit up when she saw him. She hugged him tightly, whispering promises of forever, swearing she would never forget what he had done for her. Her mother, watching from the corner of the small compound, smiled warmly and said, "Josiah, you are like a son to this family." He felt proud, like he was building something worth all the sacrifices. Over the next few weeks, Josiah sent more money, borrowing from friends, skipping meals, and hustling every job he could find. Whether it was fetching water for neighbors or loading produce for traders, he never stopped grinding. He believed in Sandra, believed in her dream, and most of all, believed that their love was real. But love, he was yet to learn, could sometimes be the cruelest illusion of all. Weeks passed, and Josiah's routine became even more intense. His mornings started before sunrise, and his days ended long after the markets had closed. Every few days he'd send Sandra small amounts of money, 2,000 naira here, 5,000 naira there, always with a hopeful text or voice note. "How are lectures going? Do you have food? Let me know if you need anything." Sometimes she'd reply with voice notes filled with laughter, telling him about her roommates, clinicals, or how cold Abuja mornings were. Other times, days would pass in silence, and Josiah would worry, thinking maybe her phone had a problem or she was just too tired to talk. But he never stopped sending money. He was her backbone, and he knew it. Sandra's mother would often stop by Josiah's workshop with warm words and encouragement. "You're a good boy, Josiah. God will bless you for what you're doing." Those words kept him going on days when his legs trembled from hunger and fatigue. He even sold his wristwatch, one his late father had left him, just to send her 10,000 for her practicals. To Josiah, every sacrifice was worth it. He believed he was helping to build their future together. One day, Sandra had even texted, "You're the only one I trust in this world. When I graduate, we'll start our life together, I promise." That message became his motivation, saved and reread over and over, especially on the hard days. But slowly, things began to change. Sandra's replies became shorter. Her voice notes became rare. One time, Josiah sent her money and asked if she received it. She replied a full week later with a simple, "Yeah, thanks." Something in her tone felt distant, but Josiah, blinded by love, chose to ignore it. He convinced himself that stress from school was the reason. After all, he knew how hard nursing school could be. He reminded himself that true love required patience. The day Sandra was meant to graduate, Josiah woke up with joy bubbling in his chest. He had counted the years, the months, and the days. He had dreamt of standing proudly beside her, taking pictures, and seeing her in that white cap and gown. He imagined the applause as her name was called, and the soft smile she'd give him from across the crowd, a quiet way of saying, "We made it." He hadn't been invited, but that didn't bother him. He planned to surprise her in Abuja. He borrowed money for transport, bought a simple gift, and traveled overnight, his heart pounding with excitement. When he got to the campus gate, he called her number. It rang twice, then went dead. He called again, switched off. He waited for hours. Students came and went in their gowns, laughing, snapping pictures with friends and family, but Sandra was nowhere in sight. By evening, his worry had turned to panic. He finally walked to the hostel where she used to stay, only to be told by a roommate that Sandra had moved out a month ago. "She doesn't really talk to us anymore," the girl added, shrugging. Josiah left confused, disappointed, and heartbroken. He had spent his last money traveling to celebrate her victory, only to return home with silence. Back in McCurdy, things only got worse. Sandra's responses grew colder. Days turned into weeks without a single message. When Josiah called, she'd reject the calls or claim she was busy. Then came the final blow. Her WhatsApp profile picture changed to one of her in a fancy car, with a man Josiah had never seen before. Her status read, "God has been faithful, my answered prayer." Josiah froze. No mention of him, no acknowledgement of the sacrifices. It was as if he had never existed, and that was the first time Josiah truly realized she was gone. Josiah didn't sleep that night. He lay on his mat, staring at the ceiling, the words, "my answered prayer," echoing in his mind like a cruel joke. For days, he stalked Sandra's profile, watching from the shadows as her life bloomed into a fairy tale he never knew he wasn't part of. She had moved to Lekki, now living in a luxurious apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, shopping at high-end stores, and dining at places Josiah only saw on TV. But what tore at his heart the most were the photos of her with the same man. Well-groomed, light-skinned, tall, and dripping in wealth. They were holding hands, exchanging kisses, smiling like a couple deeply in love. Then came the engagement post. A glowing diamond ring, a caption that read, "When you know, you know." Josiah felt something break inside him. Not just sadness, but betrayal, humiliation, and deep anger. How could she forget everything? The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the bike he sold, the hunger he endured. She was supposed to be his reward, his future, the wife he had worked so hard to support. Yet here she was, celebrating her engagement to a stranger, acting like he never existed. Determined to find answers, Josiah saved up for weeks and traveled to Lekki. He waited near her apartment complex, and by pure luck, spotted her walking into a boutique. He called out her name. She turned, saw him, and for a moment, froze. Then, with a smirk, she tilted her head and said, "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" The words hit Josiah like a slap. She walked past him like he was just another beggar. No apology, no explanation, just pure, cold denial. Josiah stood frozen on the sidewalk, people brushing past him, as his world shattered into silence. Josiah returned to McCurdy, not just empty-handed, but empty-hearted. For days he shut out the world, barely speaking to anyone. He scrolled endlessly, through old messages, those voice notes where Sandra had called him her rock, the saved text where she had written, "I'll never forget you." Now they felt like cruel lies. His mind kept replaying her words in Lekki, the smug expression on her face as she pretended not to know him. Anger brewed deep inside him, but so did shame. He had believed too deeply, sacrificed too much, and lost everything for someone who erased him without hesitation. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, Josiah decided to visit Sandra's family. After all, they had once called him son. Maybe they could explain, maybe they could help him understand why she had turned so heartless. He arrived at their home on a Sunday morning, dressed in his cleanest shirt, holding a bag of foodstuff he had bought from the market. But as soon as her father saw him, the man's expression changed. "Why are you here?" he asked coldly. Josiah explained everything, how he had traveled to see Sandra, how she denied him, how confused he was. But the response he got stunned him. "We don't know anything about that," her father said sharply. "Sandra is engaged to someone important now. Please don't come here again." Josiah turned to her mother, hoping for warmth, but the woman avoided his gaze. Her younger brother, once playful with Josiah, walked away without a word. Before he could say more, the front door was shut in his face. Later that night, when Josiah tried calling again, he realized her entire family had blocked him. Phone, numbers, WhatsApp, everything, deleted like trash, forgotten like a bad dream. That night, Josiah didn't cry. Something inside him shifted. He had nothing left to lose, and that made him dangerous. Josiah stopped waiting for apologies. He stopped checking statuses. He stopped begging for explanations. The version of him that once believed in loyalty and sacrifice had died the day Sandra walked past him in Lekki like a ghost. What rose in its place was a man fueled by quiet rage and purpose. He returned to his small workshop in Makurdi, but this time with fire in his spirit. He expanded his hustle, learned new skills, and worked twice as hard. He started fixing more than just bikes. He moved into generators, electronics, anything that would bring more money. He no longer skipped meals out of love. Now he did it out of discipline. Luck met preparation when one of his satisfied customers, a businessman from Jos, offered him a job maintaining company equipment. Josiah took the offer without blinking. He relocated, worked nonstop, and began to save aggressively. Over the next year, he built trust, took small contracts on the side, and slowly built his own brand, JS Repairs and Energy. He didn't need anyone to notice him. He just kept growing quietly, fueled by memories of being denied, laughed at, and erased. While Sandra flaunted luxury in Lekki, Josiah was building real wealth, brick by brick. 2 years later, Josiah was no longer the hungry boy with dreams. He had staff. He had a registered company. He had 2 vans branded with his name, serving clients across states. He never posted anything online, never boasted, never reached out. But deep inside, he knew. The day would come when everything would flip. And when that day came, he wouldn't be the one chasing. No, they would come looking for him. And this time, he would be ready. Not with love, but with silence sharp enough to cut. Sandra's life looked perfect from the outside. Sparkling vacations, luxury handbags, a Lekki apartment that overlooked the ocean. Her fiancé, Chuka, was a successful oil contractor with connections in high places. But behind the Instagram filters and expensive smiles, things weren't as rosy. Chuka was rarely home. He traveled constantly and, when present, often treated Sandra like a trophy, not a partner. Arguments started over little things, her tone, her friends, her clothes. And then there were the rumors, whispers from neighbors, late-night phone calls, unexplained lipstick stains on collars that weren't hers. At first, Sandra ignored the signs. She told herself every relationship had issues, that wealth came with complications. But soon, the cracks became gaping holes. One night, Chuka didn't return home. Sandra called his phone nonstop, no answer. When he returned the next morning, he reeked of alcohol and perfume. He barely looked at her. When she asked where he had been, he simply said, "Don't question me." That was the first night Sandra cried herself to sleep, the engagement ring feeling like a chain around her finger. Days later, she discovered that Chuka had a baby with another woman in Ikoyi. The real humiliation came during a family function when Chuka introduced her not as his fiancé, but as a friend. Sandra stood there, frozen, her makeup perfect, but her soul crumbling. She tried to talk to her parents, but they brushed it off. After all, Chuka was rich, and that was all that mattered to them. It was in those quiet, lonely nights that her mind drifted back to McCurdy, to the boy who once sold his bike just to pay her school fees, to the boy she had erased. And for the first time in a long while, she searched for Josiah online. But Josiah was nowhere to be found. It started with whispers in McCurdy. They said Josiah had returned, but not as the boy they used to know. He now drove a sleek black SUV, wore fitted suits, and had staff that followed him like shadows. He didn't come back to the old workshop. Instead, he bought the entire complex where he once rented space. He turned it into a tech-powered repair hub, employing over 20 youths from the area. People who had once pitied him now rushed to greet him, offering him chairs, favors, and even apologies they never gave before. Josiah didn't speak much. He simply smiled, nodded, and kept moving. One morning, Sandra's younger brother saw Josiah at the McCurdy branch of a new electronics store. Shocked, he ran home and told their parents. At first, they didn't believe him, but days later, when they passed by the massive sign that read, JS Energy Hub coming soon, reality slapped them in the face. The son-in-law they had denied was now a man of influence. That evening, Sandra's mother tried to call him, but her number was still blocked. She sent a message through someone else, asking Josiah to please come for dinner. No reply came. Meanwhile, in Lekki, Sandra received a call from a friend in McCurdy. "Sandra, you won't believe this. That Josiah guy? He's big now, like, really big." Sandra laughed nervously, brushing it off, until she saw a trending article online about a rising entrepreneur who started from scratch and now owned a chain of repair and energy hubs across northern Nigeria. The photo hit her like thunder. It was him. Different, older, sharper, but definitely him. Her hands trembled as she read the article, her heart pounding with a strange mix of regret and curiosity. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the one who had won. Sandra couldn't shake the restlessness. Her nights were no longer peaceful. Her luxury bed now felt like stone. The man she had humiliated, the man who gave everything for her future, had risen like a phoenix, and she had nothing to do with his success. Worse, he didn't even acknowledge her. No call, no message, not even a reaction to her apology post she carefully crafted and tagged him in. Her pride told her to move on, but her heart, now bruised and full of guilt, begged her to make it right. One weekend, she packed her designer handbag, put on a soft pink dress, and took the next flight to McCurdy. She went straight to the new JS Energy building, marble floors, air-conditioned reception, and a wall filled with awards. She waited in the lounge, surrounded by workers who treated her like any other stranger. When Josiah finally walked in, she stood up nervously. He paused at the sight of her, gave a slight nod, and kept walking toward his office. "Josiah, please," she called softly. Her voice cracked. She wasn't used to begging, not with men like Chuka. But this moment wasn't about power. It was about shame. "I was foolish. I made the worst mistake of my life. I'm sorry." Josiah stopped, turned, and looked her over. Perfect hair, expensive perfume, teary eyes, and trembling lips. The same woman who once looked down on him now stood before him like a child who had lost her way. He didn't shout. He didn't insult her. He simply said, "I know," then added, "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." Then he walked away. And just like that, Sandra realized what true loss felt like. Not losing a man, but losing the only person who ever truly loved her before the world told her she deserved more. Months passed, but the encounter at JS Energy lingered in Sandra's heart like a scar that wouldn't fade. She returned to Lekki, but nothing felt the same. Her engagement with Chuka crumbled quietly. No public breakup, just distance and silence that grew until it consumed whatever false love they had built. He moved on quickly, leaving her with expensive things, but no peace. Her followers stopped caring. Her likes dropped. Her name stopped trending. In private, she cried often, scrolling through Josiah's success stories, wondering what her life might have been if she had chosen love over lifestyle. Back in McCurdy, Josiah kept growing. He launched a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, quietly naming it the Sandra Trust. Not out of love, but as a reminder to himself of where he came from. He didn't build walls of bitterness. He built bridges of wisdom. But he never reopened the door to those who once shut him out. Sandra's family, humbled and ashamed, tried multiple times to reach him. They sent letters, messages, even gifts. Josiah never responded. He didn't need revenge. Their silence was now their punishment. Their regret was louder than any insult they ever threw his way. One quiet Sunday, Josiah stood at the edge of his property, watching local children play under the same sun he once starved beneath. He smiled faintly, not because he had won, but because he had survived. He had turned heartbreak into empire, pain into legacy, and he had done it without vengeance, without noise. In that silence, he had found the deepest kind of peace. And somewhere in Lekki, in a dark room filled with things but no love, Sandra finally understood. Some people are not meant to chase you forever. Sometimes the ones you betray grow too far for your apology to reach.